Disguised as a waitress, Alexandra infiltrates her billionaire father's secret dealings, uncovering a web of corruption and betrayal she never imagined. With the help of an unexpected ally, she gathers enough evidence to expose the truth. The tension peaks when Alex decides to confront her father at a high-profile event, revealing his darkest secrets to a room full of powerful onlookers. As her father's rage erupts, Alex stands her ground, determined to bring justice to those he has wronged. Will she succeed in taking down the man she once idolized, or will the power of his influence crush her attempts for the truth? Before we dive in, leave a comment and let us know where you are watching from today. And if this story speaks to you, hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories. In the opulent halls of the Harrington estate, Alexandra Harrington stood by the window, staring out at the meticulously kept gardens. She had always known her life was privileged. She was the daughter of David Harrington, a billionaire with influence stretching far beyond the towering walls of their mansion. But lately, privilege had begun to feel like a burden. Secrets had a way of finding cracks in the most seemingly perfect lives, and Alex had found a crack that had opened her eyes to the darkness within her father's empire. The whispers she had heard, the documents she had found, the uneasy exchanges she had witnessed, all of it pointed to one inevitable truth. Her father's fortune had been built not just on hard work and intelligence, but on corruption, deceit, and the exploitation of others. And while David Harrington might have been able to buy the silence of those around him, he could not buy his daughter's loyalty. Alex's hands clenched at her sides as she recalled the arguments with her father. The heated denials, the accusations, the way he brushed off her concerns with dismissive arrogance. He treated her like a child, naive and incapable of understanding the complexities of his world. But she was anything but naive, and she knew she couldn't stand by any longer. She had to expose him, and the only way to do it was from within. Alex spent weeks preparing. She studied every inch of her father's company and learned about the people who worked for him, including those in positions no one cared to look at twice. That was how she found her opening, a restaurant owned by one of her father's subsidiary companies. On the surface, it looked like a typical upscale establishment. But behind the scenes, it was a front, a place where meetings took place and documents changed hands away from prying eyes. The only way to find the proof she needed was to become part of the staff. It wasn't difficult to change her appearance. She traded her designer dresses for plain jeans and t-shirts, dyed her blonde hair a dark brunette, and covered her flawless complexion with makeup to appear more worn and tired. She practiced using a slightly different accent, one that would make her blend in rather than stand out. She introduced herself as Lexi when she walked into the restaurant for her interview, her heart pounding as she spoke with the manager. She'd learned enough about the staff to know what they needed, a new waitress to handle late shifts. The manager barely looked at her twice before hiring her on the spot. It was almost too easy. Her first day on the job, Alex, now Lexi, couldn't help but feel out of place. The uniforms were far from the elegant clothes she was used to, and the long hours on her feet were exhausting in a way she had never experienced before. But she kept her eyes and ears open, paying attention to the people who came in and out, the conversations she overheard, and the subtle exchanges between staff members and the men in suits who visited the back office. Weeks went by, and slowly, Alex began to piece things together. She learned the schedules of the men who came in to meet with the restaurant's owner, men she recognized from the photos on her father's office walls. She learned which staff members were trusted to deliver messages, which tables were always reserved for special guests, and which doors were kept locked. It was late one night, after the restaurant had closed, when Alex found her first real clue. She had stayed behind, claiming she needed extra time to clean up. She watched as the owner, a man named Vincent, slipped into the back office with a briefcase. When he emerged minutes later, Alex made her move. She slipped into the office, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was dimly lit, the desk cluttered with papers. Her eyes scanned the documents, and she found what she was looking for, a ledger filled with numbers that didn't add up. Payments to shell companies, money being funneled to offshore accounts, and signatures, her father's signature, authorizing it all. Alex took photos of the documents with her phone, her hands trembling as she did so. She knew this was just the beginning, but it was enough to prove that her father was involved in something illegal. The weight of what she was doing pressed down on her. She was about to betray her own family, but she couldn't ignore what she had seen. The next day, Alex returned to work, her mind racing with everything she had uncovered. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice one of her coworkers, a young man named Ethan, watching her closely. Ethan had always been friendly, offering to help her with her tasks and making small talk during their breaks. But today, his gaze was different. More focused, more knowing. "You're not who you say you are you?" he asked quietly when they were alone in the kitchen. Alex's heart skipped a beat, her eyes widening in shock. "What are you talking about?" She tried to play it off, but Ethan shook his head. "I've seen you taking pictures in the office," he said, his voice low. "I don't know who you are, but I know you're not just here to wait tables." Alex hesitated, fear and uncertainty swirling inside her. But there was something in Ethan's eyes, an understanding, a kindness, that made her decide to trust him. "My name is Alexandra Harrington," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "David Harrington is my father, and I'm trying to expose what he's been doing." Ethan's eyes widened in surprise, but he didn't look angry or judgmental. Instead, he nodded slowly. "I knew there was something different about you," he said. "Listen, I don't know everything that goes on here, but I know enough to want to help. Vincent and your father, they're doing bad things, and they need to be stopped." Alex felt a surge of relief. She wasn't alone. "But why would you help me?" she asked. Ethan hesitated, his expression darkening. "Because my brother used to work for your father. He found out something he shouldn't have, and he paid the price for it. I've been trying to find a way to get justice for him ever since." Alex's heart ached at his words, and she knew then that they were on the same side. Together, they devised a plan. Ethan would help her get access to more of the documents, and they would gather enough evidence to take to the authorities. The plan wasn't without its risks. They worked late into the night, sneaking into the office whenever they could, copying documents, and piecing together the tangled web of corruption that connected her father to Vincent and others. The deeper they dug, the more horrifying the truth became. Her father wasn't just laundering money. He was involved in bribery, fraud, and even threats against those who tried to stand in his way. Alex's heart broke as she realized just how far her father had fallen. The man she had once looked up to, the man who had always provided for her and protected her, was a criminal. But she couldn't let her emotions get in the way. She had to see this through. One night, as they were going through the latest batch of documents, Alex found something that made her blood run cold. It was a list of names, people who had tried to expose the truth, people who had disappeared. And there, at the bottom of the list, was Ethan's brother. Tears filled her eyes as she looked at Ethan, who stared at the document with a hollow expression. "We have to finish this," he said, his voice filled with determination. "We can't let them get away with it." Alex nodded, her resolve hardening. They were in this together, and they were going to bring her father down, no matter the cost. The night they decided to make their move, the restaurant was hosting a private event, one that Alex knew her father would be attending. It was the perfect opportunity to confront him, to reveal the truth in front of everyone who had been complicit in his crimes. Alex and Ethan worked quickly, setting up hidden cameras and microphones throughout the restaurant. They had enough evidence to go to the authorities, but they wanted to make sure that everyone knew the truth, that there was no way her father could talk his way out of this. As the guests arrived, Alex spotted her father, his presence commanding as always. He greeted Vincent with a firm handshake, the two men exchanging knowing smiles. Alex's heart pounded as she watched them, her hands trembling with anticipation. When the time came, Alex stepped forward, her voice echoing through the room as she addressed her father. "David Harrington," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "I know what you've done. And tonight, everyone else will know too." Her father turned, his eyes widening in shock as he saw her standing there, dressed in her waitress uniform, a microphone clipped to her collar. "Alexandra, what are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice laced with anger. "I'm here to expose the truth," she replied, holding up the documents she had gathered. "The money laundering, the bribes, the threats. You've built your empire on lies and corruption, and it ends tonight." Gasps filled the room as the hidden cameras came to life, broadcasting the evidence on the screens around them. The guests looked on in shock, murmurs spreading through the crowd as they realized the extent of David Harrington's crimes. Her father's face turned pale, his eyes narrowing as he glared at her. "You have no idea what you're doing," he spat, his voice filled with venom. "You're throwing everything away. For what? To ruin your own family." Alex shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. Because I can't stand by and let you hurt people anymore." David lunged toward her, his face twisted in rage, but Ethan stepped forward, blocking his path. "It's over, David," he said, his voice calm but firm. "The authorities are on their way." The fallout was swift. The authorities arrived within minutes, arresting David Harrington and Vincent as the guests looked on in stunned silence. The news spread quickly. David Harrington, the billionaire mogul, had been exposed as a criminal by his own daughter. Alex watched as her father was led away in handcuffs, her heart heavy with a mixture of sorrow and relief. She had loved him once, and a part of her still did. But she knew that what she had done was necessary, that she had to stand up for what was right, even if it meant losing everything. Ethan stood beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "You did it, Alex," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "You made a difference." She nodded, her gaze fixed on the scene before her. "We did it," she replied, her voice soft. "Together." As the night drew to a close, Alex knew that her life would never be the same. She had lost her father, her home, and the life she had once known. But she had found something more important, a sense of purpose, a determination to fight for justice, and an ally who had stood by her through it all. And as she looked at Ethan, she knew that this was only the beginning. Together, they would face whatever came next, ready to take on the world and fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves.